All righty, boys and girls, welcome back to another episode of the Red, White, Claret, and Blue show with your hosts, Alex and Christopher. I apparently want to give out all the free ads in the world. Condit.
That's not true at all.
If you listen to the cold open on Spotify or Apple Music, you'll understand that joke. Maybe. We'll see if we cut it in. But the man just seems to be trying to give away all the ads to our dozens of listeners.
Tens of listeners. That's right.
Hey, it's a very, very dedicated listener base.
It sure is.
You know,
And
you've got
and
quantity or you've got quality, and I know that we have quality. But Chris, you know who has not been quality has been Leicester and Aston Villa so far this season.
On fire.
And we're just going to dive right into the match preview here. It is home Saturday, 10 a.m. Eastern. We're recording a little earlier so that we can hopefully get some marketing out because we have a big interview coming up, hopefully next week, assuming that they don't cancel on us. And so, as we said last episode, make sure that you are tuning in Tuesday, maybe Wednesday morning, because that's going to come out, and we're really excited about that one. So
yeah,
make sure
we are couching it just in case they have to, in case they have to move it.
Yes,
there's always that.
Some pretty prominent local people from Birmingham, as well as a very, very recognizable former senior figure at Aston Villa, has agreed to speak to Chris and myself. And we've got some pretty good questions, not your standard fare. So we think it's going to be a pretty good interview. But Chris, we're not here to talk about that today. We are here to talk about Leicester. So let's dive right into it. This was an interesting one to preview because this is obviously the 20th match of the season. So the first time where we actually have some intel on the team that we've been playing, or that we will be playing. But they changed their manager. So that all kind of goes out the window, doesn't it?
Yes.
Leicester is 19th, 3 wins. They are tied with Wolves for the worst defense in the league, conceding 42 times already this year, which means that they will probably hold us to a clean sheet. They, as I said, we can't take much from the last match. I mean, we played them third match of the season. So obviously the Villa team is different. Our tactics are different, and their team is very different. But just for a quick refresher, some quick highlights. Bailey got injured in the 17th minute. Lamar Bogard, we were still doing that whole right back experiment with him. Haven't really seen much of him since. We were wasteful, and you might recall we felt like we could have been 4-0 up at one point, but this was kind of the start of that Ollie Watkins not really being able to finish campaign. Ultimately pulled out 2-1 winners, but if you'll recall, we felt like Leicester played much better than us for large swaths of that match, particularly in the second half, ultimately outpossessing us, outpassing us by nearly 200 passes. Really probably unlucky to not get something out of that game. But doesn't really matter because they now have Ruud van Nistelrooy, don't they?
That's right. And, he had a brief stint as the caretaker manager at United, and now he's landed at Leicester. And he is chief executive officer of the Vardy party, I guess, because that's still happening, amazingly enough. He's still their best scorer. I wanted to make sure I thought that was true, but I wanted to make sure before I went on. So I actually looked
very much so.
Statistics, and he is. It's Jamie Vardy and among others, Jordan Ayew leading the way for Leicester, amazingly enough. A player by the name of Jordan Ayew that I always thought was great for Villa, and I believe won.
I think he won player of the season because he was definitely our highest goal scorer that year. Now, granted, I think he was our highest goal scorer with 7.
4. Yeah,
but he was player of the season that year, and you know what? I do always have a soft spot for him because I think he really did try. He's always been a guy. He's never really punched in a bunch of goals as a striker, but he's been one who's on FIFA, one of the guys who probably has a high work rate, right? Like he would work off the ball. He really wanted to try and make something happen, and was one of the players that I think just got caught up in a bad situation that year. But before we get to players that we look at, let's go over the tactics like we usually do. So what can we expect from Senor Van Nistelrooy? Honestly, I'm not totally sure. We can look at his PSV days. and say that he had a pretty typical 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1. He likes to invert his fullbacks. He likes to build up slow and then have some verticality down the wings and use the pace out there. You can see that with some of their other top scorers with Facundo Buonanotte, Jordan Ayew, obviously on the other side around Jamie Vardy, and it seems to kind of fit his system well. You can't really take much from his United days, but the problem is with Leicester, that all sounds well and good. Sounds great. Let's implement a Dutch style for a team that can pass the ball a little bit. It's not really going well for them. His opening match, they lost 3-1. Then they drew 2-2 at Brighton, and then they have gotten smoked 4 times in a row. Wolves 3-0, Liverpool 3-1, City 3-1, or 3-0. I don't know,
2-0.
somewhere in there.
2-0.
Those 4
2-0.
games, and now scored 12-1. And I don't think it really matters where that one goal happened. Newcastle was in there as well. And in all those matches, they're not
Newcastle
playing well.
4-0. Yeah, Newcastle away 4-0. Yeah.
So 4-3-3-2, I think was what it was.
Correct.
Now, some reports say that they played better against Liverpool and City. I mean, everybody's playing well against City now, and Liverpool maybe a little bit of overestimating or underestimating the competition. But it's not like the advanced metrics really back that up. They haven't had over one expected goal other than the City match where they actually drew and outpossessed City. So maybe that one they were a little unlucky. But new manager bumps, not happening for them.
Yeah, so far, no. And I mean, I didn't see the City game, and I haven't seen any of their games, to be honest with you, under Ruud van Nistelrooy. I've not watched one start to finish. I've watched highlights to get caught up for this pod, but I'm not watching every Leicester game. I have enough to take care of with just Aston Villa. But so far, based on what I was able to look at today and yesterday when we were preparing for this podcast, and just based on the players they have on the pitch, it looks like it's going to be a slog for them to get out of those relegation spots, regardless of who's the manager. I mean, you could put Pep Guardiola down there, and I don't think he's going to have an easy time bringing them up, just because Jamie Vardy is scoring still. He's got 6 goals, I think 6 or 7. But he's not the player he used to be. That title they won was like 9 years ago, 10 years ago now. That's a long time for him to still be effective. He's in his mid-30s, and for him to be leading the line still is a great story, don't get me wrong. Sure. But you don't see it very often in successful Premier League teams where you've got a 34, 35, 36-year-old striker. That just doesn't happen, because legs go and younger players are able to keep their work rate up much better. So I on paper, it looks like it should be 3 points for Aston Villa. Just looking at where each team is, even with Villa's struggles so far this season. With that said, that leads you to believe that it'll be somehow 2-0 Leicester, but they're just the way things are going. But yeah, they just don't have the players to keep up with the Premier League this season, it looks like to me.
None. It's interesting because there are bright spots and at least some Premier League experience, right? You talk about Jamie Vardy, you talk about Buonanotte, who I think is a really good player, 20-year-old Argentinian winger. He's got 6 goal contributions on the season. Listen, Jordan Ayew has been in the Premier League for nearly a decade, right? And playing with somebody. He's got 4 goals this year. Ndidi has dealt with some injuries, and they've certainly had some injuries along the back line, but they've still got James Justin. They've got a lot of guys that were still with them in the Premier League, but it doesn't seem to be working. And what was interesting for me as I was looking into this, I was expecting something from Van Nistelrooy of, okay, we've had a bunch of quick matches in succession now. I've kind of figured out what I need to do. This is how I want to adjust our play style, all that kind of stuff. What can you do with what you got? And in all his press conferences over the past week talking about it, it's just, I know what positions we need to upgrade. I know who we need to buy. And, it's for him, I think it's probably a bit of reputational damage limitation. Like if he doesn't do anything with this, he can always say, "I didn't have the players that I needed." Um,
Yeah, but you took the
but when
job,
you're
you know.
yeah, do your job. Like when you're a manager in that situation in that locker room, you don't know for sure that you're getting anybody new, no
Right.
matter what the owners might tell you. And like, what does that say to the guys that are there? Why even
Yeah.
bother trying?
Yeah. I agree. I thought that was a bad look. And I think that as a manager, if what you're saying is true, that it's potentially reputational damage control that he's looking at, I I just worry less about that. If you're that worried about your reputation, then don't take the job at Leicester, because it's going to be a difficult job.
Right.
Um, it always will be. Even when they won the league, they were relegation favorites the season they won the league. So like to to come out now and say, I know we need to buy X player, this position, whatever it may be. Uh, it's not a great look, and very few seasons are saved in the January window. It's very rare. You're overpaying it, so if he thinks that's going to be the change, if Van Nistelrooy thinks that's going to be the change that gets them out of the relegation spots, I just don't see it. And I do agree with his assessment, I guess, that the squad's just not good enough. They're not. They were always going to be in a relegation scrap. And I mean, I think that's generally true of obviously most teams coming up from the championship, but uh, it's sort of like that first year with Aston Villa, where you got to hang on for that one season to stay up, and then you're in a better financial position. But I don't know that their owners would necessarily spend a bunch anyway, like Villa would, or like Newcastle did, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I do agree. The lineup is not great. The player's not great. Jamie Vardy, I just looked up. He's 37 years old. Like that's extremely old for a
Yeah.
striker in the top flight of English football. So if he's the one that you're looking to get goals from at this age, I don't think you're going to be a big threat. Now he'll probably get a hat trick because I said that, but that's where we are.
But the thing is, it's funny you talk about the goals that they need. They've scored 22 times. They've scored more than Everton. They've scored more than Ipswich. They've scored more than Southampton. They've scored more than Crystal Palace, Man United. They're one fewer than West Ham. They can score.
They
It's
can
really the
see.
defensive side that he
Yeah.
needs to figure out and figure out that defense, because they're doing enough, at least on the offensive end, to say they could get to 16th, right? But defensively is where he needs to do it, and I just don't know that his system, that all the evidence that I won't even lie and say that I've seen from Van Nistelrooy, what
Sure.
I've researched about Van Nistelrooy, like nothing that I've seen says that they're going to be compact enough at the back, and that's what I think we need to be thinking about as we kind of look to the Villa side of this,
Yeah.
is not necessarily that this is a team that can't score, that we can't give an opportunity to. They're probably going to carve out an opportunity or two, just like we saw in the reverse fixture. This is another one where I think we're going to need to outscore them, especially given the defensive frailties that we ourselves have shown over the course of the season. This is going to be a 2-1, 3-1, 3-2 kind of match, not another 1-0.
And we just lost our best central defender as well, in Pau
Yes.
Torres. So there's that, but yeah, I agree. And I do want to just, since you brought that up, they are what, 2 points off? 2 points off safety. The difference is right now, anyway, at this point in the season, Wolves are going this way and Leicester is going this way, or continuing, I guess, to go this way, so that's where you feel like they're further off than they actually are,
Sure.
because Wolves have gone on this little run recently. So they still could be safe. They could get there. Like I said, their team just, to me, is just not that good. They're just not good enough anywhere on the pitch to really stay here for the long term.
Well, talk about not being great in a couple different areas of the pitch. Let's talk about Aston Villa then.
Hey
Uh,
now.
as you said, we're kind of missing someone at each level of the field. We're going to be missing Pau Torres in defense, potentially a broken metatarsal, which I think was one of the first things that I texted you when I saw the injury, having had that
Yep.
injury myself. Missing Morgan Rogers due to yellow card accumulation in the midfield, advanced
Yep.
midfield. And then no John Duran once again up top. That
Mhm.
suspension that may or may not be getting increased due to the charge from the FA,
Yeah.
which we can put aside for another time. So Chris, if you're in charge, you can give it to me from your from Chris Condit's illustrious, intelligent perspective, or from Unai Emery's. What are you doing tactically, and what are you doing from a lineup perspective?
Yeah. I was kind of in a tough spot there putting the lineup together because the first question I have, and from what I can see, he is available. Is JJ fully fit and available?
He played 20 minutes and didn't get injured again, so I assume
Yeah.
so.
So like I think that changes things, with him being available. But what I would probably do if I'm Unai Emery, if you want to talk about the lineup that I'd go with, you put Martinez in goal. That I think pretty much goes without saying now. And I'm back to
Pretty much.
the what's that?
It pretty much goes without saying. Do you think there's
Well,
someone
I
out
mean,
there
we have to actually say
clamoring
it,
for
is what I mean. We have to say
for a
it out
Gotti Gucci
loud.
Gauchi start?
We have to say it out loud. It's Martinez in
Okay.
goal, Cash, Kansa, Mings, Luka Dean, because of the injury to Pau. I'm back to Kamara and Onana, but I guess technically I would do Onana deeper than Kamara, but Onana Kamara in that way, and then you go Bailey, Tielemans, McGinn, and Watkins. I think is what Emery's going to do based on the players available. I don't know about JJ starting just yet with his injuries and how he can't seem to stay healthy, but I like I've said before, and I'm kind of going back to a familiar lineup in a way. We've only played it a few times, but I like the setup of Kamara and Onana together in that defensive midfield. Even though Onana did not have his best day in the previous game, I understand that he didn't look particularly good at all. But those two together, along with a very experienced midfield coming forward, I think allows you to dominate where you're best in that section of the field. And given the players that we have available, I think that's the best possible lineup for this team right now. What changes are you making based on who's available?
So I have a gut feeling that Unai is going to want to continue with a Yori Kamara midfield as opposed to Onana.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is underestimating the competition a little bit. I think the benefit of the two bigger, stronger defensive midfielders, as you kind of laid it out, would be effective, knowing that Leicester is decent going forward. So I think it'll be Kamara, Tielemans, and then we've got McGinn kind of moving back into that 10 role, Bailey on the right, and then either one last opportunity for Jaden Philogene before he goes out on loan,
Yeah.
or Jacob Ramsey on the left. Alternative option would potentially be Ian Matson
I
playing
was
as a
gonna say
left winger,
you could pull him forward, right?
which I wouldn't hate. I'm not. We've talked a lot about why Unai doesn't trust Ned. We haven't talked a lot about why Unai doesn't seem to trust Ian Matson. I
Yeah.
think probably more because Luka Dean has just been that good that it's kind of been, yeah, you know what, fair. There's not a place for another left back here. As I think about it more, I think your lineup is probably the correct one. You're getting as many kind of senior heads in there as possible to see this out, assuming that Unai has done the same analysis that you and I have and said Leicester actually can, be kind of dangerous going the other way. You're able to defend it. What I did find interesting was Leicester's home and away splits in terms of possession. So as I said, they can possess the ball. We saw it when we played at their park, out possessing us, and they did that even under Van Nistelrooy over the last streak that they've had. Home, they've been over 50. away, they've really been in that like 35 to 45 range. So I feel like I'm becoming a broken record saying this, but at some point in the game, you're going to see Villa need to break down a low block. And I'm not totally sure that we're going to be able to do it. Once again, we can make a plea for Emi Buendia to get a few minutes in here to try and break someone down, but I don't think it's happening unless he comes in for the last 10 minutes. He's certainly not coming on for a start. So I think with Villa, and it seems with Emery, no matter how much you and I try to speculate on how we're going to change tactics or approach or do something revolutionary to kind of stem the tide of this run that we've been on, I don't think it's changing. I don't think anything's happening. We're gonna keep working the ball around. At moments, we're gonna play really quick and look great and try and attack them. If they do try and invert those fullbacks, I think it's a really good opportunity to get Bailey on the right and hopefully someone quicker on the left to get in behind there, much like we did in the last match against Brighton. And barring that, like I think we're going to see much of what we have for the past 7, 8, 9 matches.
So the two things, like Buendia, I think is a good call as a sub. Still, I think he's a great weapon on the bench that hasn't really been utilized as well as maybe he could be, because he's so creative in the midfield, and it's a difficult ask to come in and say, all right, go make some stuff happen, but he's a nice piece. And I think we kind of forget how good he was pre-injury. Now he may not be 100% there where he was, but he was a really special player for us before the injury. And then in terms of bringing in a fast player down the left side wing, like, would you assume that you're pulling McGinn for Jaden or Maatsen in that spot then, one of the two, because those are probably your two quickest available players down that side?
No, I think you're pulling Onana. So like I said, it would be
Okay,
Kamara
yeah,
and Yuri in the midfield. McGinn goes to the 10, and then you have your
I got
pace
you.
on the outside, Bailey to attack one side, probably Jacob Ramsey on the other one. I don't think Philogene is getting another start at
That
this
makes
point.
sense. Yeah.
So
Somehow I already forgot about JJ. Yeah.
yeah. So that would probably be my assumption of what Unai is going to do. I thought it was pretty effective the way we attack, right? And you and I said that's how we needed to do it, was draw them in, hit some longer balls over the top to those channels and really attack those gaps. And it seems like a similar recipe should be able to be effective against Leicester. It's just a question of whether we can execute it.
Yep. I'm with you there. I hope so. At this point, do you want to do a score prediction, since I think we've kind of knocked out everything we could here? All right.
So what we mentioned in our recap was the amount of times that Villa have given up a goal in the last 15 minutes of games. And what was it, 11, 12 times, something like that? We can see it in the last 15 minutes. So I'm going to say a 2-2 draw where Villa get another 82nd minute gut punch.
That would be brutal. That would be rough. I'll say 3-2 and be positive, since Leicester shipped so many goals. Okay. I'll say 3-2, but probably either first shot on target is a goal, or they give up one in the last 15 minutes. One of the two is going to happen. If both happen again, I'm going to lose it. If both happen again, I'm going to lose it. Yeah.
Both happened to Brighton, you're right. And now two again. All right. So once again, you're a little bit more optimistic than I am, but I think both appropriately lukewarm. Other podcasts are probably predicting 3-0 Villa victories or something like that. Maybe 4-1. We're going to give Leicester one goal. That is not us, the lukewarmiest of lukewarm takes. And speaking of pouring some cold water on some hot transfer rumors, we have the return of Chris infiltrating the Villarati.
So it's silly season now.
Yes,
one of our favorite times of the year.
A lot of time on social media pulling some of these together. We've got a few, I think, that we'll go through in more depth at the outset, and then some that we'll just hit quickly at the end. But I guess we can go back and forth here. I'll give you the transfer.
Yeah.
And some details about the guy, and you can tell me your thoughts on it, and then
Yeah.
vice
You go
versa.
ahead.
And
I think that's a good way to do it.
the first two, I think we need to do in conjunction because I don't think we're getting both guys. It seems to be a one or the other situation, but it is our attacking reinforcements in Daniel Malen, the right winger, 25-year-old Dutch right winger from Borussia Dortmund, or Randall Kolo Muani, who we all remember hates Emi Martinez for that save in the World Cup. The 26-year-old from PSG. Now, Malen is being rumored. Latest offer was 18 million plus add-ons. It looks like Dortmund is holding out for 20 up front. And Kolomuani is shockingly 60 million euro, potentially part of a swap deal with John Duran. So a lot to consider with these two. But Chris, what are you looking at with the two of
So
those?
I looked at both these guys, and I'm considering both the player and the price tag here. Like
Sure.
60 million for Muani is outrageous. And I know PSG needs the money, so I think that's part of it because they are in a bad way financially. But like that price tag, even if you're swapping Duran to offset some of that, I don't want to do
I
that.
think Duran's worth more than that.
That's what I'm saying. I
That's
don't
also
want,
crazy.
if there's a deal that is a swap for Duran, I'm out. I'm out. Like a 21-year-old striker with his speed, ability, and power. Like those guys are not growing on trees, and he's only getting better under Unai Emery, and he's 21 years old. So for all the Louis Barry people out there that are telling us about how great Louis Barry is going to be when we sell him to, I don't know, some championship team, Burnley.
Stoke. Yeah.
Yeah, but like like Louis Barry is older than John Duran. I cannot stress that enough. And yes, he's played very well. Anyway, I'm getting on a tangent, but
Yeah, please
like
stop.
21-year-old strikers that are this good in the Premier League are just not. They're just not like easy to get. So I don't see Aston Villa making a swap. All right, I don't see it. So for that reason, to me, Alex, to me, Mullen is the more attractive piece, but he's cheaper for a reason, right? He's not near the finisher, and he, from what I saw looking at Twitter and then who scored and transfer mark and all that, he tends to play anywhere across the front, but prefers to sort of play as a number 10 or second striker. So we're a little crowded in that area, but that versatility of having a player that can play across the front line is attractive to me for that price point, particularly. If you're talking about 20 million, which is what, about 22, 23 million pound, because they're talking about euros. Like for me,
Other way.
that's the player to buy. What's that?
I think it's the other way. The
Oh, did I
pound is
flip
worth
it?
more
So
than
it's
the
like
euro.
18
Yeah,
million
so it'd be
pounds.
like
Yeah,
18
yeah,
pound. Yeah.
yeah. So, like, that's the player to consider. He's younger as well. I just, I think that's the one that is most attractive to me. He's fast. He gives Leon Bailey a push at right wing, and before, when Bailey was pushed, he excelled. The player that I thought of that I that when I saw the rumors and the highlights and all those things, was Musa Diaby. I thought that they were trying to sort of recreate Diaby in the aggregate. Not the exact same player, but a very similar type player that they
Did
can
you just
hope
pull
to
the
kind
Jack
of get
Grealish
some.
quote out there?
What's that?
The famous Jack Grealish quote from Perslow. We tried to replace Jack in the aggregate
Oh,
with three players.
I wasn't thinking about that. Yeah, I guess I did. Yeah. What I mean is, like, we paid what, 50 million for Diaby or something, 40 million for Diaby. You're spending half that if you do get him. So I think that's the player that makes more sense, both, especially financially, but even as a player that would take on this project that Emery would want to bring on board. I think it's Mullen more so. That's where my gut is. Do you have any thoughts on those two players?
So I'm with you. I think Daniel Malen is the move. I just don't. You said PSG needs the money. Everything that I see statistically, I don't understand why Kolomuani is 3 times the price. I really don't. You look at him last year, 26 matches, 6 goals, 5 assists, 11 goal contributions. That's fine. He's playing for PSG in Ligue 1. If you're
Yeah.
like that good a winger, and I know they've got a lot of talent on that team, but like you got 26 appearances. John Duran has more than that in the 12 that he's played so far this year. So like throw the John Duran swap out the window as you appropriately did. And Daniel Mallon, 13 goals, 1 assist. So more goal contributions in a better league. Maybe more minutes, but still. And when you compare the two on FB Ref, it's actually kind of funny. So Kolo Muani's number 1 comp on FB Ref is Daniel Mallon. Like it's so obvious the type of guy that we're trying to go at. But in a lot of the metrics on a per 90 basis, Daniel Mallon actually outperformed Kolo Muani last year. And so to get him at 1/3 the price, a year younger, is really shocking to me. I don't know if there's like this glamour price tag of like a French tax of being on the France national team, but like I don't see it in the performances in the output to say that Kolo Muani is worth that much more. Now, in terms of profile, I think that this might be where you look at one guy or the other. They both have very similar profiles in that they are pacey, they are good dribblers, and they are criticized for their inability to cross and their lack of defensive contribution.
Sounds a
So
lot like Leon Bailey when they,
at least
when we
Leon
first
Bailey
got
can
him,
cross
right?
the ball,
What's
but
that?
at least Leon Bailey can cross a ball when he gets
Sure.
it back
Well, but
from the
I'm
bench. He
talking
can
about
play
the
a good
knocks
ball.
on him. I'm talking about the knocks on him when we got him. I'm
Yeah.
not talking about what we know as the player now.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, similar knocks. And so my question with either one of these are, you and I have said repeatedly, like our defensive organization is trash right now. Our inability to stop people from scoring on first shots, last 15 minutes, like whatever. And we've talked a lot about how it seems to be like mental discipline. And that's why Ned isn't getting a minute, because off the ball, he doesn't know where he's supposed to be. So to bring someone else in here to move Leon Bailey to the bench, who you and I have kind of praised for at least his defensive work rate, if not necessarily his defensive skill, I think is risky. This is another one in sort of the way that you keep describing Unai Emery and what he said about himself of like, I'm going to score one more, even if it means that I'm going to concede one. And you know that I just fundamentally kind of have an issue with that approach. So I'm curious how we would use them both. I do think Kolo Muani is more of a traditional winger, at least where he's going to take up positions. Daniel Mallon, to me, seems almost like Morgan Rogers coming off the right. He's someone that wants to drift into the middle and has the potential to clog that up with where he naturally wants to be. So unless we're not actually using him as a right winger, and we are planning to bring him into that number 10 sort of second striker role, I'm curious how it's going to work. The Bundesliga said that his closest comp in recent memory was Eden Hazard in terms of the way that he plays. A guy who is very ball dominant, cutting in a lot, decent long shot, could beat a man. And that sounds like a great player to have in your arsenal, and probably not someone that we really have right now outside of Morgan Rogers. But I've got a little bit of skepticism as to the tactical fit, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the only thing, because of all the reports, and so one of the things I talk about a lot is where these reports are coming from. All the reports are that Mallon wants to come to the Premier League, is open to coming to Aston Villa. So that is more than likely coming from his camp, right? If they're trying to push a move and they're trying to drive up the price, is what they're trying to do there. So, but I do think that if he wants to come, like you can look at the success of Leon Bailey last season, and the success, by the way, early of Moussa Diaby last season, as a reference point. But even Leon Bailey, when he's doing his best, he is crossing, obviously, but he's also driving the ball to the end line for that classic Unai Emery pullback goal, where he's setting up somebody coming in from the center, either 9 or 10 or whatever, that's going to score an easy, usually tap-in goal. And with the pace that Malen has, like that's attractive to me tactically. Whether or not he will do it and execute it, I don't know. But the ability certainly is there to dribble the ball and get it to the spot where we know Unai Emery is going to want him to take it to stretch the defense and set up that pullback goal, because that's Emery's number one threat all the time, right? Is to try and bring that ball as close to the end line as you can, to really stretch that defense out vertically.
I will say Daniel Malen has always been a frequent purchase of mine on FIFA when I'm
Nice.
playing as Aston
There
Villa.
you go.
So,
Yeah.
that would be fun to see that come true as
Yeah.
well. Be a couple
Yeah.
years ahead of the game. But yeah, I mean, look, I'm going to be, if Unai Emery wants these guys, I'm sure he's got a plan for it. And so I trust him there.
Sure.
I'm just curious to see what the fit is going to be. But I'm with you. All things being equal, I'm absolutely taking Daniel Malen for 20 instead of Kolomwani for 60. I don't need to touch that one.
If that's the discussion, that's an easy one, easy one.
Yeah. Next, Antonio Silva, 21-year-old center back from Benfica.
Correct.
Got,
yeah.
Chris?
So he's a young man, but looks like he's got a lot of talent. From what I read today in doing the research, Benfica are looking for 40 to 45 million euro, which seems a lot, but this kid has played for Portugal. He's made 17 international appearances. He's made 7 starts so far this season. He seems to either play all 90 or not at all, and he rotates. Usually he's playing left center back. He rotates with Nicolas Otamendi. So Otamendi has gotten the other, or at least 9 of the other 8 of the available starts that Silva has not gotten. So he looks to me to be a potential loan in, looking at how we're shaping up with Mings and Pau Torres being either injured or, in Mings's case, recovering from a very serious injury. And so I don't think they're paying the $45 million or euro option to buy, but to bring him in on loan and pay his wage, I think is reasonable to do for the rest of the season. And then at the end of the year, you're making a decision based on the health of the players you have available. Maybe you do activate that buy clause if you can sell off a Mings in that case for, you're not going to get 40 million for him, but for 10, as long as you can make that work financially, that would be the move to make. He looks like a very attractive player. He looks like a classic Unai Emery center back in the research and videos that I saw. Like I said, Pau Torres, but 21 years old, and obviously not as good because he's not Pau Torres, but at 21, he looks to be a very good player. I just don't know that I'd pull the trigger for the 45 million buy, but bring him in on loan. Absolutely. If you can make that work, he looks great. And given the issues we've had defensively and injuries now we've had defensively, I'm here for all the defensive backup we can get.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. The right foot, but typically playing left center back really interests me, especially
Weird,
in
right?
an Unai system where you want your center back to be able to play the ball a lot. Having him on his non-dominant foot is interesting. I do also wonder if this could be a long-term Diego Carlos replacement. Similar to what you said about Mings, do you move him to the right side? Have him deputize on the left now, especially with Pau Torres potentially being out for a long time. And then, you have the option in the off season, if you can move Carlos on for 8, 10, 12 million euro, to then be able to bring him in as an understudy to Ezri Konsa. And now you've got Pau, Mings, Konsa, Silva shaping up to potentially be a nice two set of center backs there. So I like it, to your point, particularly on a loan. It sounds like Juve is kind of falling out of the running because they were at 30, 35 and didn't want to go up to the 40, 45 valuation. They buy good defenders. They've got
Mhm.
good scouting on that end of the ball. So if they're interested, I think it bodes well. But like you, I won't profess to have watched many, if any, of these matches.
Right.
So
Yeah. No,
this is all,
I was just
this is
doing it
all
today,
speculation on one day's worth of statistics and
Right.
YouTube watching. But I do as a loan, again, with our defensive issues with injuries being out, I think it's a decent deal.
Yep. So yeah, I would do it as a loan again, option to buy. That's what I would think.
All right. So, the rest of these links are a little more tenuous, and I don't think that we have a ton of a ton of data or research on them. So, I'm just gonna list out a couple
Yeah.
names and just give me like a yes or no in 1 to 2 sentences why. Okay.
Sure. Yep.
All right. So, God, I'm gonna butcher this one. I don't speak
I
Turkish.
was waiting for you to do this one.
Yasin Ashken, center
I
back
think
from
you're right.
Kasımpaşa. Also a left-sided center back, although apparently he's played some left back as well. There's a bunch of YouTube videos making the rounds of him just making ferocious crunching tackle after ferocious crunching tackle. Reminds me a little bit of Freddie Gilbert in the early days. Um, what do you think?
So he's even younger, 18 years old. Depending on the number, I'm good with it. I can't find a number out there for him right now that is
I've
worth
seen
anything. What's
from
that?
time to time. I've seen something around 8 million. Take it or leave it.
Like,
For
I mean, I would do somewhere around that, but not much more. And that, like, to me, that's sort of like a luxury buy. I don't think you need to do it in January. So I like if we're talking about this window, it's a no for me um, for that.
Yeah, I'm a no as well, particularly if we get in Silva. If we
Yeah.
don't, then I think my attitude changes. We don't
Yep.
need him at left back. Luka Dean is great, and Ian Matson is super young, coming up, super highly
And you
rated.
paid
Like
a
I
lot
don't
for
see
him.
him overcoming either of those guys. But as a left center back to potentially play behind Pau, if to your point the plan is to move Mings on after this season, then and you don't get Silva in, then like yeah, maybe it makes sense. Have a 19-year-old center back coming up that you can ship out on loan for a year or two, whatever the thing may be. Um, but if you're going to pay 40, 45 million for Silva, who also plays on the left, and you don't plan to move him over to the right, to your point, it's a luxury buy. I
Mhm.
don't really know why we're doing it unless we're going after a Chelsea model of just buying everyone young, loaning them out, and trying to make some money selling them on at some
We
point.
are. I mean, we are doing that
Which
to some
good.
extent.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Yeah.
So maybe it's a buy for that, and we actually never wind up seeing him.
Right.
Um, Sammy Hill's loan recall from Bologna, potentially trying to send him out somewhere else. It sounds pretty definite that he's coming back. I guess the question is, are you sending him out on loan again, or are you keeping him around the squad trying to get him integrated?
I'm probably sending him out again. I think he needs minutes, and I don't think he's going to get them here. I think that it's disappointing that he wasn't able to get minutes at Bologna so far, and because you loan players out so they play, right? So you're going to look for a spot for him that makes a lot of sense, where he's going to get a lot of minutes. And I think the most recent one I saw was, oh no, I'm thinking of Philogene now.
Yeah.
I don't like, you have to find a spot for him at a relatively high level. So we're not talking about sending him to the championship or something like that, but he's
No,
got
he's got
to
to play
be at a
top
top flight
flight.
somewhere. Yeah. Where he's going to play. So I get taking him back because you don't want a guy out there just sitting. I mean, he can sit here and not play, and be in training with our team every day. Like, it's better for him in that case to be here. But I think if and when they bring him back, he's going back out.
Yeah, unless there's some plan to turn him into a left winger,
Yeah.
and Jaden Philogene is leaving. We obviously Jacob Ramsey can't stay healthy. Like, do you keep him around just as an auxiliary option? Maybe.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, otherwise, I think he's got to go back out on loan because he's not getting a minute here.
Yeah.
And so with that, let's go to Jaden Philogene. There talks of a loan to Turkey with Fenerbahce. As of this morning, apparently Ipswich were interested again. We'll all remember that they actually were the ones who triggered his buy clause from Hull that we decided to match. Uncertain whether that interest is on a permanent deal or a loan. But regardless, seems like he's leaving. What do you think about that one?
So he's another one where he's disappointed so far this season, and there's no other way to put it. He's gotten limited minutes for sure, but he's not been as effective as I would have liked to see him at this point in his career. So I think getting him somewhere where he's playing more regularly is going to make sense. So I do think if you send him out, it's probably going to be a loan or a buyback clause where they're going to insert something to try and keep him around, because clearly they are interested in what he can do. I mean, when the buyback clause got triggered, Aston Villa matched it immediately. So I do think that they see what he can do, but he needs more minutes, I think, and Ipswich would make sense. If he can get in Fenner, I'm good with that as well.
Yeah, for me, it's a matter of what the offer is. If you're going to make a profit on him 6 months later when he's played 3 times,
That's a good point.
I kind of take it. If it like, let's say we bought him back for 15. I forget what it was, but let's say it was
Something
15,
like that.
and let's say Ipswich offers 18 or 20. I might just take it. To be honest, I don't. While yes, he's gotten limited minutes, I also think that yes, he's gotten enough opportunity to show at least what he's got for the immediate future. And that is frankly just not up to the level of what Aston Villa needs. He hasn't quite made the jump from championship to Champions League, which is fair. Very few players do. But I also don't see a team coming in with 20 million for Jadon Philogene right now.
Right.
So I'm doing it on alone because he's too young to take a loss on at this point and not think that with another year, 2 years under Unai Emery, he could become a half decent player that's worthy of not only that 15, but some sort of fee beyond it. So I'm sending him out on loan. I don't really care where it is. A lower table Premier League side, I wouldn't go as low as Ipswich because I worry how much they're going to be under it and not necessarily getting him the ball to develop. So maybe Turkey kind of lets him just shine out a little bit away from the lights. But yeah, I'm definitely sending him out on loan because I just don't think he's contributing. Ned, sending him out on loan anywhere. Also, apparently Ipswich are interested in him as well.
Again, he's one I'd send out anywhere where he can get minutes because he's so young. Like it doesn't even have to necessarily be in the top flight, but if he can get somewhere where he's going to play regularly, I'm here for it. Yeah.
There's no chance I'm selling him. That's all I'll say.
Right. No.
I think we've seen enough from him to believe that there is a bright future for him with Aston Villa. So yeah, it's got to be a loan, but I'm with you. I'm sending him somewhere to get him some time.
Yeah.
And the last one is just a fun one. I don't think there's any chance in hell that this happens, but in the everybody wants John Duran sweepstakes, one of the craziest ones I saw was a swap deal with Napoli for Victor Osimhen.
It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen.
Obviously, it doesn't happen, but would you take that if it was offered?
I don't. All right. I mean, like I'm going to say that it's not great TV or video podcast. I don't take it. Like I already said this earlier. There's no deal that I can think of. I'm sure that there's something, but like if you're offering me a swap for John Duran, I'm almost always going to say no because I think he's that special of a player potentially. So my answer to Napoli, no bueno.
I mean, to be honest, as a straight up swap, no money involved, I might actually take this one.
No money, but no wages either. Then, right?
Sure, no wages either. But like Victor Osimhen is 26 years old, and in his last 4 seasons in Serie A, 24 games, 10 goals, 27 games, 14, and then 32, 26, 25, 15. And then with Galatasaray this year, he scored 9 goals and assisted 3 in only 11 matches. Like, this guy has a proven track record of scoring double digits every single season that he's been a professional since John Duran's age. Now, yes, John Duran could absolutely become that. but he is that. He is absolutely 26 years old. The finished article. I don't understand, and actually, so this is where I'll caveat all of this. 2 years ago, this was the highest rated striker in Europe, and everybody was supposed to be in for him for 80 to 100 million minimum. And now he's on loan at Galatasaray because no one came in. So that makes me curious about
That is a good point to raise. Yeah.
what attitude or issues are going on behind the scenes, because the production is there to say that, Man United, go buy this guy. Why are you buying Rasmus Højlund? Like, you're spending almost similar money, right? So there's something else going on there with him. But like, from a pure production standpoint and knowing that you're getting the finished article, I might actually take that swap. And you know how much I love John Duran, and that would.
I know you do. I know you do. I know you. I have a tough time at 21 years old and just turned 21, giving him up, for just about anybody, because I really do think he's got the potential to be as good as anybody.
Yeah. No, I mean, listen, I completely agree with you. Potential is absolutely there.
Yeah.
All right. Any others that I missed that we should be
No,
talking
I think
about?
those are all the big ones right now. I'm sure that like tomorrow there will be 10 more because that's the way this goes. But it does look to me, I do just want to say quickly, it does look to me like Aston Villa are going to make moves quickly, or at least a move or two quickly, to try and get this done early and get players in, because there's just too much smoke right now from legitimate sources, not just garbage, from DAZN Italy or whatever, but like, actual reputable journalists are putting things out there right now.
Now, let me ask you this, Chris, actually, before we go, because I
Yeah.
think this is an interesting one. I think, can tell from all of this that there are two areas that Aston Villa are looking at. The forward line, not necessarily a striker, but kind of those attacking moves right behind, wide player, and a central defender, which is where I think we've typically thought ourselves strong. No right back, and apparently we feel fairly good about the center of midfield and the left side. Kolo Muani and Daniel Mallon more right-sided to central players as opposed to left side. How do you feel about that? How do you feel that there isn't a link to a right back or to a left winger or something like that?
So I would really appreciate a link to a right back. Like that, I think, is where we are weakest, because right now I think part of our defensive struggle comes from the fact that we are having Ezri Konsa play like a traditional right back. And we talked about that in the last pod, so we don't need to rehash the whole thing. But when Cash is not available, and I like Matty Cash a lot more than a lot of people do, a lot of Villa fans do. So, but when he's not available, we are stuck. And we don't look good right now. So unless you have to change something, you have to change a player or you have to change the tactics, because what is happening right now doesn't work. So I would prefer a focus on the right back. Left wing, I would think that you'd want to look in that spot, but also if you consider that you're going to be moving Morgan Rogers more to the left and you're bringing Yuri Tielemans or playing John McGinn or somebody like that more centrally, that has worked pretty well. So like
Jacob
from
Ramsey coming back,
if I had
another guy that's going to play on the left side there.
Yeah, if I had to rank, like, it's right back way ahead of left wing for me.
Yeah.
What about you? Do you have any thoughts or anything to add? Yeah.
No, I got nothing to add. I'm surprised because I think Unai has been vocal that they want to look at the right back position. So maybe that's where we kind of see some more smoke over the next couple days. Dougie Luiz is not coming back, and I don't think we need him. Let's put a pin in that one. So anyone saying central midfielder, like, we've got enough. If we're going to spend in January where you're going to overspend and there isn't that much opportunity, I think we've got the right areas.
Unless you can play right back.
Surprise me.
Put Douglas Luiz at right back, see what happens.
Sweet Jesus. That's not terrible.
Jack Grealish at right back.
Making the Ashley Young move at this point in his career.
Ashley Young.
Let's bring him back in from Everton. Um, no, so Chris, that was fun. I'm glad that we could get infiltrating the Villarati back. I'm sure that we've got a lot more infiltration that's going to happen over the rest
There'll
of this
be
month.
more, I'm sure.
But in the meantime, we turn our attentions to Saturday, home against the Foxes. And listen, we both, as a recap, you predicted 3-2, I predicted 2-2. Hopefully it's better than that in 3-0. But all we can say until then is up the Villa.
Up the Villa.
Hi, Mom and Dad.